Is Jabari Smith Jr. a bust? In this video, I'm going to try to answer this question. Tap in, enjoy. If you're new to the Chop Shop, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get the best NBA content out there. Also, hit the like button on this video if you appreciate the content that you're watching. And don't forget to visit the Chop Shop merch store. The link is going to be in the description of this video. Make sure you support the channel so we can keep bringing you guys this heat. So currently Jabari has a 38% field goal percentage, which is not great. 29% 3-point percentage, which is not great for a guy that was slotted to be a 3-and-D sniper. And his EFG is at 45%, which is not great at all. So by all accounts, he's struggling. And to me, one of the main reasons that his struggles are more pronounced than other rookies is because Jabari is not a self-creator. That's really the fundamental issue with what's going on with him and why he looks so bad, is because the style of the game that he has. And this kind of, to me, is the foundational issue with the perception of him by fans, by the general NBA audience, is because of this fact, because he is almost in a perfect storm of being a self-creator that's in an offense that demand self-creation, right? Coach Silas's offense, he runs a lot of high pick and rolls, spread pick and rolls, a lot of dribble handoffs that lead into isolation, and a lot of isolation. And even though this is what they want to run, a lot of the times the sets don't really look like they're supposed to. Once the initial action is countered by the defense, our guys kind of break down into isolation anyways. This is a disaster for a player like Jabari, who has been limited. If you watch Jabari at Auburn, one thing you'll notice that the coaching staff there did at Auburn, Bruce Pearl and his staff did, was they recognized what Jabari was, right? Jabari is somebody that's going to struggle trying to generate space with his handles and all these other things that some of these other players like Paolo and other players would do. And Bruce Pearl's offense basically used the pick and roll with Walker Kessler, then used some off-ball action to try to get Jabari some plays where he would get a mismatch on a smaller player or get into the post. And this is a misnomer. Jabari operated a lot out of the post at Auburn, and I've watched film on Jabari, but for this video, I think I watched 3 of their games, and the game that really stood out to me was the loss they had against Tennessee. And when you see him, some of his most high-scoring games, those are the positions that they had him working, about that kind of that 15 to 18 foot range. That's where they initiated offense from. Now you counter that or contrast that to the Houston Rockets, where Jabari is getting all his initiation from the 3-point line. So then that makes it that much harder for him to be able to get going. And this is not going to excuse any of his poor shooting. That's, to me, all the rookies are shooting bad from 3. I want you guys to just look at this graphic. Look at this graphic, see how poorly everybody is shooting from 3. So, except Keegan Murray, most rookies struggle from 3, but it's more pronounced in Jabari because he doesn't have the other side of his game like some of these other guys have. Paolo, self-creator. When he's not shooting well from 3, he can get to multiple aspects in his game, whether it's the post up, whether it's him in transition, whether it's him running the pick and roll, or he's the roll man as a pick and roll big, whether it's him getting some easy mid-range shots. But the Magic also put him in position to be successful. Whether it's Mathurin in his game, getting to the free throw line, being able to generate, getting downhill to the basket. So he's put in positions where these can be maximized for him. Jabari is the only player out of this group that his game and what he did well in college isn't being offered for him in the NBA level. Essentially, the Rockets have made Jabari a role player. They've made him a role player, and I'm going to show you guys how this is happening. They've made him a role player because they've made him literally just somebody that shoots 3s. And if he's not shooting 3s or attacking closeouts, the only time he's going to get offense is in either in transition or off of putbacks and other type of random plays that have nothing to do with any intention to get him going or get him the ball. And to me, this is the base reason why he's suffering. We're going to look at how Jabari was used at Auburn compared to the Houston Rockets. I think this is the root of a lot of the issues that he's currently having. So what I did was I went through Synergy and looked at their play types and try to kind of break them down based on shot distribution, and seeing how he looked at Auburn and seeing what was working and successful for him there and how it was translated for the Houston Rockets. I'm going to give you all forewarning. It wasn't translated by the Houston Rockets. So the most frequent type of shot that Jabari took at Auburn were spot up threes. So the spot up threes were 24% of his diet at Auburn. As far as his shot diet, about 1/4 of his shooting. And for the Houston Rockets, that number jumped up to 30%. So that is a high amount of his shots came in the spot up range. And when he was at Auburn, he was an excellent spot up shooter. And you guys know, basically one of the best shooters coming out in the draft. And that's why he was slated to be one of the top players, whether he was going to go 1, 2, or 3. This was the reason why, the spot up shooting. This is kind of the big mystery of what went wrong with Jabari. Like, what happened to his spot up shooting? Why is it so poor right now? Because at Auburn, he was shooting 45% from 3 on those attempts, 79 attempts. So that volume is where I want us to kind of focus on, the volume of those shots. So at Auburn, he had 132 spot up possessions, and he was ranked as a 94 percentile and an excellent spot up shooter in those possessions. At Houston, he's had 303 possessions, and he's ranked as a below average. So going from excellent to below average, that's a big drop. And if you look at the percentage of the shots that Jabari had from the spot up region, that's 30% in Houston and 24% in Auburn. So regardless of where he was, a lot of his shots were spot up threes. I think that's the majority of his shot, both at Auburn and both in Houston. The 7% increase is significant, though. That is a significant increase in shooting over a player. That's about a half a possession more per game for him. You could think that over an 82 game season, that's about 40 more possessions. So that's the top shooting with spot ups. If you look at it, his second most frequent shots at Auburn were isolation. And people are going to be like, isolation? Yes, isolation. One thing Bruce Pearl did was he did a great job getting Jabari to his spot. Get into a spot using their offensive schematics to get him mismatches on switches on smaller players. If you watch the old Auburn games from 2022, a lot of times they would use the high pick and roll with Walker Kessler at the top of the key and have Jabari cut across from sideline to sideline over, and whoever was in the paint would set a back screen for him to be able to switch out to the player that person was guard. Usually it was a small forward or a shooting guard that he would be switched on, because his man would be screened by the opposite end person that's on the wing over there on the opposite end. So once they make that switch, Jabari would then try to pin down the smaller player in the position, and then they out of the pick and roll, they would try to get the ball to the 3-point line and get an entry pass for him if the initial pick and roll read didn't work. First off, let me just say, that alone is more complicated and more innovative than anything I've seen the Rockets run in the past few years. So shout out to Bruce Pearl and Auburn for having a better offensive system than the Houston Rockets. But once he was in that position, they would dump off the ball there, and that's where he got a lot of his isolation shots. In that position where he was having mismatches against smaller players he could use his height and shoot over. And a lot of times the shots that he was successful on were just a quick pull-ups, whether it was 1 dribble, 2 dribble, pull-ups. When he tried to put the ball on the ground, that's where he got in trouble. That's where he got the kind of the tag of being a non-creator. We saw that whenever he would try to get the ball and try to make something with it, he'll fall or do something. We've all gotten accustomed to that now. And so for even the announcers would know that was the knock on him coming out of college. But if you saw what he was doing well, it was those quick shots in the kind of the mid to high post area where he was able to get mismatches. And the Auburn offense really did a great job of getting him to a spot where he could take advantage of those smaller players. And in those possessions, Synergy as a college player, they ranked him as a very good isolation player. Now, the funny thing is 15% at Auburn. Guess what that number is for the Houston Rockets? 4%. So that went down by 11%. That is a lot. So he dropped 11% of his play types are basically, the 4% is insignificant. He doesn't get a lot of isolation plays. He really doesn't see much in isolation plays from the Houston Rockets, because that is not what their MO is a team that has all these first round picks. In fact, he's only had Y'all want to hear this? 28 possessions in isolation. And if you look at his ranks for the half court shots that he gets, that's the only thing he's good at. Everything else he's poor or below average. So the only thing Jabari's good at, he's only gotten 28 possessions of doing that. And, you know, obviously, what does that sound like? It sounds like a player that's not being prioritized and put into a system that doesn't fit him, right? So this is what, you know, like I said, this is what he's doing now. 303 possessions as a spot-up shooter. He has only 28 possessions as an isolation player in 61 games in the NBA, compared to when he was in college. In isolation, he had 82 possessions in only 34 games. So that ratio is really crazy for me to see that. The third most frequent play for Jabari in college in the half-court setting came on post-ups. So 11% of his shots from Auburn came in post-ups, and he was ranked as a very good post-up player. For the Rockets, only 46 possessions of that. Only 46 possessions of post-up. That's 6%. That's a 4% decrease in that. So if you calculate the two, 25% of Jabari's shots were in the isolation in the mid to high post or the post-ups. On the Rockets, it's only 10%. That's a 15% decrease in him getting touches in a certain aspect of the court. For the Rockets, you know where his second most frequent shots come from for Jabari? In transition. That's where they come from, in transition for the Houston Rockets, 19%. So between his spot-up shooting and transition play, 50% of Jabari's offensive diet is spot up and transitions. Whereas in Auburn, he was getting a quarter of his shots came from spot ups, 15% came from isolation in the mid to high post area, 11% came from straight post ups, and 12% came in transitions. So if you look at him in a half court setting, basically, if he's not getting the ball on a fast break, or he's not getting it where he can walk up into a transition three, he is getting it as a spot up shooter. We have basically turned our number 3 pick into an elite role player, and he's not very elite right now. And why is this significant? Because this is significant because Jabari doesn't do other things very well. We've already spoken about the knocks on him as a player. He can't really self-create. He's not like a pick and roll ball handler where he could generate everything that he wants to do on his own. He can't run the offense. And the offense for the Rockets isn't generating open shots for him. So when he struggles like every other rookie in shooting threes, and if you look at the 3-point shots for the rookies, they all suck. If he struggles like every other rookie, he just looks terrible. And you can blame that on the offense. You can blame that on the offensive system, not the shooting, but his overall look, because there's nothing catered for him to be able to shine at the things he actually does well. Some of the best things Jabari did: post-up player, isolation in the mid-range area. He's an excellent spot-up shooter from college. All of those things are either below average or poor on the Houston Rockets. And if anybody's played basketball, you would know that basketball is a rhythm game. You have to get your rhythm. You have to be in a groove to be able to feel yourself out and get that confidence. And if your confidence is only relying on you hitting threes and nothing else, and there's no prioritization by the team, by the coach to get you shots, then you are going to struggle as a young 19-year-old in the NBA. So that's really one aspect of looking at it from that. I wanted to contrast him with Paolo Banchero. And as you know, like if you go look at all the shooting stats for the rookies, they all suffer, but all these other rookies look better than him. The only rookie that's really having an elite shooting year is Keegan Murray from 3, and we know their offense generates all the shots that he wants to have. Keegan is coming off screens. He's doing all these things that help him generate shots. Can you imagine trying to run pick and rolls with Keegan? Can you imagine trying to like have him isolate over and over and over again? No, because their offense is based on movement, a lot of and he's a movement shooter. That's what he did in college, and that's what he's doing in the NBA. For Paolo Banchero, one thing that you have to appreciate that the Magic are doing for him is that they're actually helping him develop into the player that they want him to be. And it's a little easier to do that with a player that could self-generate. But one thing the Magic have done is that they've really looked at what Paolo was good at in college, and they looked at things he had potential in. When Paolo was at Duke, he was a player that basically played like a star, but it was a role player usage, so he wasn't just going crazy with all the shots. And with the Duke offense, he really didn't get to explore a lot of the game that you saw flashes in for him. At Duke, a lot of his shots came either in spot up or in isolation. We saw that he was used a lot off ball and forced to kind of shoot, and for him, that wasn't a strength of his. So you know what the Magic did for spot ups? They decreased that by 6%. Now in their offense, only 14% of his shots are in spot up. So they saw something that he needs to work on, and they're going to take that away because they see that as a weakness. So don't always assume that you have to put people in disadvantages for them to be able to improve. You actually, typically what the NBA does and coaches do is they try to work through the issues players have while building their confidence and trying to explore and build on things they already do well. That's how you teach, and that's how a lot of people go about doing business when it comes to developing players. If you look at his isolation, which is what he also did a lot of isolation in college, they took it down 6%. They took his ISOs down 6%. And you know what they did with those isolation plays? They moved that percentage over to pick and roll ball handler. Paolo was only playing 5% of his offensive possessions as a pick and roll ball handler at Duke. The Magic ramped that up by 17% to 22%. So almost a quarter of Paolo's reps comes as a pick and roll ball handler. This is identifying the talent that your player has and trying to maximize it. And he was good as a pick and roll ball handler as a 5% guy at Duke. As a 22%, he's average, which is actually really impressive for a new skill a player isn't really good at doing on the NBA level. And so these are significant. They took down his post-ups because of obviously the team construction. They have a lot of bigs that they could use on Orlando. But the fact that they decrease his spot-ups, a weakness of his, and increase a strength of his that was just there kind of on low volume shows that they had a plan for Paolo and they have a vision and intention in what they want him to do. You contrast that to Jabari, a player that you see what his strengths are, and instead of giving him the isolation touches in the mid to high post, drawing up plays to get him mismatches, using him more as a screener on pick and rolls, what they did was they basically just put him to the side, and Coach Silas has openly admitted that they don't run plays for Jabari. They have made him a glorified 3-point spacer. This is a number 3 overall pick in the NBA draft from the 2022 season. They've made him a glorified 3-point spacer with no intention on getting him plays. Why is this happening? So to me, what it comes down to with Jabari and the Rockets and why they're using him as a glorified spacer, with most of his shots coming in just spot ups and coming in just transition and offensive putbacks, is that they have too many guys on the roster. And honestly, I don't think we know what to do with them. We have a situation where you have a coaching staff and a team that has too many priorities and too many fires going on at the same time. And what tends to happen when that occurs is that people get left behind, and Jabari is going to be a casualty of that situation happening. This is why we have players like Ty Ty and Josh Christopher that don't get minutes and get sent down to the G League, because you typically don't draft that many first round picks, and you don't draft 3, 4, or 5 lottery players because it's hard to get the minutes on an NBA court, because also it's hard to fit all of them and maximize their talents on a system that is predicated on ball handling. It is not a coincidence that when Jalen, Kevin Porter, and the guys that are the stars of our teams don't play, you know who fills in and gets the most shots and usage and touches? It's going to be Knicks, Eric Gordon, whoever the point guard is. They're the guys that replace them because the offense is predicated on ball handlers. The offense is in the hands of the ball handler. And if you're not a ball handler, the only way you could feast is off of secondary actions, putbacks, transition, or if they kick you out for a 3, or if you're a center, when you get a bounce pass or a dump off or a lob. And so this is what our offense is. So just naturally, that type of offense isn't built for players like Jabari Smith Jr., who needs post-up touches, mid-range touches at different parts of the court. To me, this is irrelevant to his shooting. If Jabari is going to shoot 20% from every zone in the NBA, I don't care. But I need to see him get the ball at different parts of the court, because I've seen him do it in college and I've seen what works for him. And to build his confidence, I'm going to ensure that he gets ample amounts of touches in isolation where he can get mismatches. I'm going to run offensive sets to get him that. You don't have to run a play to get Jabari a shot, but you do have to run plays to get him advantages. And I think that's where Coach Silas has failed. When he said he doesn't run plays for Jabari Smith Jr., I'm not even sure why he said that out loud. That's not a flex. That sounds like incompetence. because you know what his limitations are, and you're trying to build his confidence and build his game as you go on. A lot of those limitations aren't going to be fixed in the NBA on the court in real time, because when you're playing and the bullets are firing, you don't have time to practice those fine motor skills and the little things you need to get better. Those are going to be fixed over time, in long periods of time, in the off season, in practice and things like that. But in order for you to implement them, you have to get enough quality reps to be able to maximize those skills. Now, the reason I'm hopeful for Jabari, despite what the Rockets are not doing for him, is that if you look at some of the things he is doing well, like finishing at the rim, being able to attack closeouts with competence, being able to hit some of his mid-range shots, those are things that he had weaknesses on. And that speaks to me to his work ethic and things that he's doing to get better. And even though the Rockets aren't putting him in any positions to be successful, like some of the other rookies are being put in position to be successful, if as he improves on the aspect of his game, like him in transition, getting putbacks, rebounding, and things that doesn't require him to have the ball in his hand. When we do have a system that has a coach that knows what they're doing, that can balance out the distribution of shots for the roster, and maybe when some of the clutter is cleared up on the roster and he is going to be a priority because he is the 3rd overall pick, then you may be able to see him flourish. And I think that's really where the hope should lie for Jabari and the Houston Rockets fans. It's not that he's doing this great feat right now, or there's some hidden things that he's doing well, but it's that the things that he was supposed to be good at, he sucks at them. And a lot of the reasons he sucks at them is because he's not being in position to be successful. The shooting, to me, across the board, rookies struggle on shooting threes. You can look at multiple rookies from multiple years. They struggle, especially bigs that are stretch bigs that have to get adjusted to the NBA line. They struggle for shooting threes. Where they don't struggle at is the natural aspects of their games. And Jabari isn't given an opportunity to be able to show that. So he's having to learn and get the scraps and get the things that he wants to do. You don't believe me? Go watch film on the best games that Jabari has had. A lot of the games that he has had where he scores a lot of points comes off of putbacks, offensive rebounds, transitions where he gets fouled or gets to the layup line. And he may hit a couple threes, but even the games he does well, the threes are irrelevant. He's not like shooting 60% from 3 when he's doing well in the games. It's off of just hustle and things like that. A lot of little things around the basket that he can get. So that's what he's getting his points off of. If there ever comes a time where a coach is hired that gets Jabari in the spots, even close to what Bruce Pearl did, then we may be able to see the guy that we all thought we were going to get when the draft came. So is Jabari a bust? No. But what is happening is that the Rockets as a tanking team are failing him to put him in position to be successful. And it looks worse than it actually is, because in this game and on the offense that we run, a lot of the things, if you're not being put in position to be successful, you're going to be forced to try to self-create, and it just looks bad when it's not there. You compound that with him missing threes, like a lot of these other rookies are. You compound that with being on a team that has about 7 or 8 other guys that are 1st or 2nd year players. You compound that with a coach that is trying to figure out what he's going to do as a coach, as a head coach. You compound that in a context where they're tanking. You compound that in a place where there's an insecurity at every level, whether it's the coach knowing he might get fired this year, the GM trying to make moves to make him keep his job, and all these things happening. That's a perfect storm for a player to struggle that's young. But I think I've seen enough. If you look at what really made him successful at Auburn, he has not been given the opportunity to be successful at that. So is Jabari a bust? No, I don't think he's a bust. I think it's too early. In fact, for all the players on the Rockets, I would love to see what they look like on a team that actually knows what they're doing and has some intention, some structure to be able to help them out. So this is my takeaway on Jabari Smith. Give him time, give him a new system. When they can put him as a priority on the team and he can get into a spot and he gets his rhythm going, and they can run some plays, not to just get him a bunch of shots, run some plays to put him in advantageous positions, then I think you can see his real true stardom shine from there. So give the kid some time, give it some years. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the video. Are you scared about Jabari's future? Did this video help clarify anything for you? Let me know in the comments. And as you always know, hit the like button if you like the content that you're receiving right now. And as always, keep supporting the Chop Shop as we keep dropping that fire.